France in the late 18th century was a kingdom teetering on the brink. Decades of extravagant spending by the monarchy, coupled with costly wars and a system of taxation that disproportionately burdened the peasantry and the emerging middle class, had driven the nation into economic turmoil. The French people, inspired by Enlightenment ideals of reason, liberty and equality, grew increasingly resentful of the absolute monarchy of King Louis XVI and the privileged aristocracy. The lavish lifestyle of the ruling elite stood in stark contrast to the poverty and hardship endured by the vast majority of the French population. France's social structure, rigidly divided into three estates, further exacerbated the growing discontent. The first estate, composed of the clergy, and the second estate, comprising the nobility, enjoyed vast wealth, privilege and exemption from most taxes. In contrast, the third estate, encompassing everyone else, from wealthy merchants to urban laborers and rural peasants, bore the brunt of taxation and possessed limited political rights. This deeply entrenched inequality fueled resentment and a yearning for change. Adding to the volatile mix was a series of poor harvests, leading to soaring food prices and widespread hunger among the peasantry. The desperation of the common people struggling to survive amidst economic hardship and social injustice created a tinderbox of resentment ready to ignite. France, once a mighty kingdom, was a powder keg of discontent, primed for a revolution that would shake the foundations of the old order. As the 18th century drew to a close, the French people yearned for change, their voices rising in a chorus of discontent that could no longer be ignored. The stage was set for a revolution, a tumultuous upheaval that would forever alter the course of French history and leave an enduring legacy on the world. In 1789, facing a dire financial crisis and mounting social unrest, King Louis XVI made the fateful decision to convene the Estates General, an assembly representing the three estates of France, for the first time in 175 years. The king hoped to secure approval for new taxes to alleviate the kingdom's financial woes. However, the Estates General, instead of providing a solution to the crisis, became a catalyst for revolution. The Third Estate, representing the vast majority of the French population, arrived at the Estates General with their own grievances and demands for reform. They called for an end to the system of privilege that favored the clergy and nobility, demanding fair taxation, political representation, and equality before the law. However, the traditional voting system of the Estates General, which granted each estate one vote regardless of its size, effectively gave veto power to the First and Second Estates, ensuring the status quo. Frustrated by the deadlock and inspired by Enlightenment ideals, the Third Estate took a bold step on June 17, 1789. They declared themselves the National Assembly, a body representing the true will of the French people. This act of defiance, a direct challenge to the absolute authority of the king, marked a turning point in French history and the beginning of the French Revolution. The National Assembly's declaration ignited a firestorm of reaction. The king, initially hesitant, responded by locking the Third Estate out of their meeting hall. Undeterred, the deputies convened at a nearby indoor tennis court, where they swore the famous tennis court oath, pledging to remain assembled until they had given France a constitution. This act of defiance galvanized the French people, who rallied behind the National Assembly, their hopes for a more just and equitable society now pinned on this revolutionary body. As tensions escalated in Paris, rumors spread of royal troops amassing outside the city, fueling fears that the king intended to crush the burgeoning revolution. On July 14, 1789, a Parisian mob, driven by fear and fury, stormed the Bastille, a formidable fortress that symbolized royal authority and oppression. The storming of the Bastille, although strategically insignificant, held immense symbolic importance. It represented the collapse of royal authority and the rise of popular power. The capture of the Bastille, a symbol of tyranny and despotism, resonated throughout France and beyond, inspiring hope for change and fueling the flames of revolution. The fall of the Bastille unleashed a wave of popular uprisings across the French countryside known as the Great Fear. Peasants, fueled by rumors of aristocratic plots and driven by centuries of oppression, rose up against their feudal lords. They attacked chateaux, destroyed feudal records, and demanded an end to the centuries-old system that had kept them in bondage. The Great Fear shattered the old order in the countryside, leaving a power vacuum that the newly formed National Assembly struggled to fill. The storming of the Bastille and the subsequent Great Fear marked a turning point in the French Revolution. France had entered uncharted territory, the old order crumbling before the irresistible force of popular will. The revolution, once a distant rumble, had erupted with a vengeance, forever altering the course of French history. In the aftermath of the Bastille's fall and the Great Fear, the National Assembly, now firmly in control, set about dismantling the remnants of the absolute monarchy and forging a new France based on the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity. On August 4, 1789, in a momentous session, the Assembly abolished feudalism, sweeping away centuries of privilege and oppression. This act liberated the peasantry from feudal obligations and paved the way for a more equitable society. The National Assembly, guided by Enlightenment ideals, adopted the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen on August 26, 1789, a revolutionary document that proclaimed the fundamental rights of all citizens. The Declaration, inspired by the writings of Enlightenment thinkers like Locke, Montesquieu and Rousseau, enshrined the principles of individual liberty, popular sovereignty and equality before the law. In 1791, France transitioned from an absolute monarchy to a constitutional monarchy with the adoption of the Constitution of 1791. The Constitution stripped the king of much of his power, creating a legislative assembly responsible for making laws. It established a system of separation of powers, dividing governmental authority among the legislative, executive, and judicial branches, and enshrined the principles of representative government and popular sovereignty. The establishment of a constitutional monarchy marked a radical departure from France's absolutist past, signaling a shift in power from the monarchy to the people, represented by the elected legislature. However, this fragile new order, born out of revolution and idealism, would soon face challenges that threatened to plunge France into further turmoil.